On today's show, I wouldn't trade Darius Garland. I've told you that a bunch of times, but why should the Cavs at least think about it? We'll talk about it on today's edition of Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? My name is Danny Cunningham. You might know me from my time covering the Cleveland Cavaliers, places like my Substack, The Inside Shot, Cleveland Magazine, 92.3 The Fan, and a number of other stops along the way. I want to say thank you to you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Make sure you drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. Be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure a friend is subscribed as well. And if you're watching this show on YouTube as we get started here, do me a favor. Hit that thumbs up button for me. Click subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. A proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. As I've said pretty consistently, from the time the Cavs were eliminated from the postseason to now, I do not think it makes a lot of sense for the Cavs to trade Darius Garland. I just don't think it does. Now, that said, Darius Garland is not a perfect player, and I understand why there are reasons as to why trading Darius Garland might be something that makes sense. So I wanted to kind of dive into those reasons, and if I'm going to spend as much time as I have, which has been more than one episode, obviously, and even a column type thing over at my Substack, if I'm going to spend this much time talking about why I think it's a bad idea to trade Darius Garland, I do think that the other side needs to be visited. I think I probably need to spend some time going through exactly why he should be somebody that the Cavs should consider trading. So that's what we're going to do today, at least at the start. And I did see a report from Jake Fisher over at Mark Stein's Substack, The Steinline, that I want to talk about in the second segment. We'll get to that as well. But with Darius, I wouldn't trade him, and I've gone over the reasons why. But the things that I look at as to, okay, why does it make sense to trade Darius Garland? Those things exist. And I think the number one thing that you look at with Darius is the injury history that he has, because you look at what happened this year where he's dealing with the foot injury. And I think a lot of this stuff, and I don't think the toe injury necessarily qualifies as a quote unquote freak injury, right? Like it's a sports injury. It's not like the jaw injury that basically wiped away last season from him. That's a freak injury. That's not a normal basketball injury. That doesn't happen. Like, I do not remember anybody in the NBA missing any time this year with a broken jaw. So that to me qualifies as a freak injury, where a lot of guys this year in the NBA missed time with a toe injury. Like, that is something that happens in this sport. So while you want to say that that one's a freak injury, one's not, that's fine. But like, I do think you kind of can get to the point where it's like, this guy has not been at his best in the playoffs. He's not been able to consistently stay super healthy. And I think that if you want to say, okay, how durable is Darius Garland? I think that's a fair conversation to have, because it has been, several different things that have cost him time. And I know he played 70 plus games this year and he was very durable, but when the Cavs needed him most, he was not available. And I don't look at this as something that it's his fault. It's an unfortunate truth. Darius Garland needed to be healthy in the playoffs for the Cavs to be at a point where, instead of having this conversation today on Monday, June 9th, we'd be talking about what happened in game 2 of the finals for the Cavs. Like, that's what needed. That is one of the things that needed to happen. So if there's not a reason to believe that somebody, and Darius is, of course, undersized as an NBA player, if you do not believe that Darius Garland can be any healthier than he was this year, where, during the regular season, he was very healthy. If you don't believe that he can sustain his health through the rigors of a full NBA postseason, then I think that is reason to shop him around. From a personal player standpoint, I think that is reason, if you don't think that Darius Garland's ever going to get through a postseason healthy, and there are a lot of guys, big and small, that have not been able to get through postseason healthy. Like, take a look at Joel Embiid, who can't get through regular seasons healthy either. But even the years where he has had very healthy regular seasons, something has gone wrong for him in the playoffs. Sometimes that's his fault. Sometimes it's not his fault. I don't think this stuff is Darius Garland's fault, but it is an unfortunate truth that you do have to discuss when thinking about reasons why the Cavs might want to make Darius Garland available. And before I go any further too, I don't know that while, yes, like Darius Garland is a player that I believe is available, the Cavs are not going to be in the business of giving Darius Garland away. And I think that is an important thing to know. Like, right now, is there a chance Darius Garland gets traded? Yes. I think right now it's like 70-30 that Darius starts next year in Cleveland on the Cavs. I kind of think that's where we're at. Like, there is a chance that he does get traded this summer, but my sense is there's a better chance he stays in Cleveland. Now, of course, it is June 9th. Anything can happen. There's a long time. There is an eternity in the NBA world between right now and the next time that the Cavs will play a basketball game, whether Darius Garland is on the roster or not. But I don't think that they're going to be in the business of, man, we really have to trade Darius Garland. Like, we have to get this guy off the team. I don't think that's the case. That should not be the case, too. But reason number two that you look at is where the Cavs are at financially. And this summer, the Cavs are going to be restricted. They're going to be restricted, I would imagine, this summer and next summer with what they can do. And I don't know if this serves as like their last chance to remake the roster, but I do think the further they go down this road with this core group of players, and as I have explained on this podcast, when I talk about core group of players, I'm talking about three guys. I'm talking about Evan Mobley, talking about Donovan Mitchell, and I'm talking about Darius Garland. So the further down the road you get, I think the more difficult it becomes to break up that core. I think the further down you go, the more challenging it's going to be to trade one of those guys. Not because those guys aren't awesome, but just because of where this team is at financially and wanting to get value back. It's going to be a difficult thing to do with where the aprons are, with how expensive the Cavs are going to be. I do think that it's a solid point to say this could be the last chance that the Cavs have to remake this team in the pieces that surround Evan Mobley and Donovan Mitchell. This could be one of the last chances to surround those guys with a different cast that might work out better in postseason situations. That is one way to look at it. That I don't know is necessary. Like, I don't know if I look at this and say they really need to remake the supporting cast or they need to change the core. But if that is the road that they think they do need to go down, I think that is something that becomes pretty hard after this season. I think that is something that as this team moves forward, and I would expect them to likely be in the second apron. Now, if they do trade Darius Garland this summer, they might not be in the second apron. They could find themselves out of the second apron. And I don't think a Darius Garland trade alone would do that. Like, I think if they trade Darius, there will probably be other moves that follow that could potentially get them down out of the second apron. But I think we kind of have to wait and see with that. And I don't know that any of those dominoes would fall before a potential Darius Garland domino, just because so often, the biggest one does fall first, even though that's not always the case. But I do think if the Cavs want to remake what this team looks like, what this roster looks like, I think that trading Darius Garland is not an easy path to do it, because I think these trades are hard to figure out. With Garland, you would have to get a lot back if you were to trade him. So I do think if you look at this and say, okay, well, we want to remake the roster a little bit, it's a challenging trade to make, but he is the guy that is available, quote unquote available. Again, not trying to give him away, but he is the best available trade target or trade piece that the Cavs would have to send out. Because if Darius Garland is available, Jared Allen is most certainly available. Evan Mobley and Donovan Mitchell are not available. You would, by a landslide, be able to get more back for Darius Garland than you would Jared Allen or anybody else that could be available on the trade market from the Cavs roster, because Darius Garland is the third best player on this team, and I think there's a significant gap between him and the fourth best player. And 25-year-old, two-time All-Star guards do not pop up on the trade market all that often. So I would think if the Cavs are going to trade Darius Garland, I think that it would have to be for quite a haul. So that could be one of the other reasons to look at it and say we could get a lot for this guy, that we could really remake what this roster looks like, what the supporting cast around Evan Mobley and Donovan Mitchell looks like. That could be a reason to do it. And then the one other reason that I have is that the two small guards in the playoffs thing, right? We've heard that time and time and time again, that there are how many teams that have won championships with two small guards. And I think we kind of forget that a team did it last year in the Boston Celtics because neither of those two small guards were their best players, but like Derek White and Jaylen Brown and Drew Holiday, not exactly big guards. Now they're very good defenders, which is kind of what that small guards thing is pointing at. But I do think it's a fair question because when two small guards are two of your three best players, I do think it becomes a challenge. Now, I don't think it's some impossible thing. And I know the Cavs certainly, and Kenny Atkinson, chief among them, pushes back on Donovan Mitchell being a small guard because of how long his wingspan is. And I think there is something to that. Like, I don't necessarily look at, I think height can be kind of overrated when you talk about how NBA players are built. I think wingspan matters more because you can look at some guys and be like, okay, well, how long of a neck, this sounds wild to say, how long of a neck do they have? Because you don't necessarily gain anything if your neck is an inch and a half longer. Where are your shoulders at? Like, that is something that matters. How long are your arms? I think that matters a little bit more than where the top of your head is. And Donovan does have long arms. And I think that he, with that combined with his explosiveness, I think he plays as somebody that is bigger than what he's listed at. Like, he's listed at 6'3", and I don't know if he's actually quite 6'3". He's probably 6'2", but he plays bigger than 6'3". I think he plays more like somebody that's 6'5" because of how long his arms are. Darius Garland is not that type of player. Like, Darius Garland is somebody that is 6'1" and plays like he is 6'1". So that could be something that you look at and say, you know what? We've got a great piece in Evan Mobley. We've got a true superstar in Donovan Mitchell. We need to reimagine what this team looks like around them. And if you want to talk yourself into trading Darius Garland, I think those are the reasons why you might want to trade Darius Garland. Again, I wouldn't personally, but I do think that those are the reasons why. Now, there was a report that came out on Sunday that specifically brought up Darius Garland, brought up the Cavs, and brought up a certain Eastern Conference team. We're going to talk about what that report said, who it was about, and why I think it's very important next right here on Locked On Cavs. Today's show brought to you by Monarch Money. Do you ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, entertainment, it can be easy to lose track of all that cash, but that's where Monarch Money comes in because they'll be your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It is a complete financial command center where you can track all your accounts, investments, spending right in one place. You stop just managing your money and you can start building your wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, even plan for those long-term goals that I know you have. It's time to start saving money. Monarch Money will help you do just that. Plus, managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without all the stress that you might think comes along with doing that. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That is code LOCKEDONNBA, LOCKEDON NBA at monarchmoney.com for half off your first year. Again, monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. Like I said earlier, you can find us anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review and be a friend. Tell a friend about the show. I do have an announcement coming up in the next segment as well that I want to make sure everybody gets because I need a little bit of help from you guys as far as how we want to take a certain thing that I want to do with the show moving forward. But I did want to touch on a report that came from Jake Fisher, who writes, of course, at Mark Stein's Substack, the Stein line, and he brought up the Darius Garland rumors that have been obviously pretty persistent. And this was more so brought up from the angle of the Orlando Magic. And Fisher wrote a lot of stuff in a very well put together, detailed piece for the Stein line, pondering, will Orlando chase an all-star talent like Atlanta's Trae Young? For all the noise these days around Darius Garland in Cleveland, we've been reliably told that the Cavaliers and Magic have not held substantive conversations on a Garland deal, and that Cleveland has little interest in helping Orlando improve its standing in the Eastern Conference. I think that is one of the best things that you could hear about these Garland rumors. That does take, I'm not going to say it takes a potential suitor off the board, because it's June 9th and so much can happen and will happen before any Darius Garland or Jarrett Allen or Isaac Okoro or Dean Wade or you name it, trade can happen. A lot of time has to pass. Trades are not going to be agreed upon right now. It's just not where we're at in the transaction cycle. So you look at this, and I think that this is spot on, and I think this is how the Cavs should be thinking. And I know that when the Garland trade stuff first popped up, Orlando was a really popular team to bring up. And I get it, because what does Orlando badly need? They badly need a point guard. From an Orlando Magic perspective, I don't know how many players out there that are considered to be available that would make more sense for the Magic than Darius Garland. I think that he is the exact type of player they should want. And I'm sure that Philip Rossman-Reich over at Locked on Magic would agree with that. Maybe. I don't know. I'll have to ask him. But he is exactly what the Magic are missing. If the Orlando Magic had an all-star caliber point guard to pair alongside Paolo Banchero, and if Franz Wagner remembers how to shoot, the Magic would become a true problem in the Eastern Conference. Now, this year, they got the 7 seed, which I think was mostly because they dealt with so many significant injuries, where Jalen Suggs missed so much time because of a knee injury. Paolo Banchero missed a lot of time at the start of the season because of an oblique injury. And Franz Wagner missed a lot of time in the middle of the season because of an oblique injury. Those guys are awesome players, particularly Banchero and Wagner. And if you pair them with an all-star caliber point guard, I think that team would take off. Because if you look at how the Magic play, they have been a great defensive team. And you might sit back and immediately say, well, Darius Garland would make them a worse defensive team. I would push back and say Darius Garland started a lot of games on a team that finished number 1 in the NBA in defensive rating. So it's not as if having Darius Garland means you're not going to be good defensively. I think a lot of the noise, and he's never going to be considered a good defender, and that's fine. But I think the level of defender he is probably brought down a little bit more than it should be. Like, I don't think he's just some atrocious defender. He's fine. He's not great, but he's not an atrocious defensive player. If you were to put him on the Magic, I think that Magic team goes from, let's say they would have won 50 games this year. Had they gotten a good hand, dealt a good hand in terms of the health, because I think that's probably about the caliber of team they were. They probably would have won 51, 52 games. Like, they would have been somewhere in there, the 3, 4, 5 range in the postseason seeding. The Milwaukee Bucks would have been the team that dropped out. They would have fought with New York and Indiana for seeding. That's a really good team. That's a very good team. And if you add Darius Garland to that, I think that you run the risk as the Cavs. And I'm not sitting here saying that the Cavs should be scared of anybody, because that's not how this stuff works. But what the Cavs should not be doing is being in the business of helping a team get to where they are. Because the Cavs right now are probably, if I had to bet, are probably going to open up whenever the finals ends over the next 10 days or so, and FanDuel releases their odds for, NBA champion next season, Eastern Conference champion next season, Western Conference champion next season. I would think the Cavs in the Eastern Conference are going to either be the odds-on favorite or have the second best odds to win the East. That is what I think is going to happen. The Orlando Magic are probably going to be 4th or 5th in that conversation. If the Orlando Magic trade for Darius Garland, the Orlando Magic become closer to the Cavs. And I'm not so sure that there's a trade out there that makes the Cavs better, because I don't think trading for Jalen Suggs makes the Cavs better. And that is the easy one to sort of slide in there, because Suggs is making $30 million next year. And yes, his contract goes down. And that is a way for the Cavs to sort of sneak out of the second apron the next couple of years, but it is something that I don't think makes the Cavs better. I think that makes the Cavs worse, partially because this is a Cavs team that in the postseason doesn't need to be better defensively. Their postseason issues have been because their offense has collapsed. And why am I having this conversation about Darius Garland being a perfect fit in Orlando? Because Orlando's offense stinks. Despite the fact they have two all-NBA caliber guys, at least all-star caliber guys, their offense stinks because they don't have a point guard. If Jalen Suggs were good, the Orlando Magic would be much, much better. So I don't think that makes sense for the Cavs. It makes a ton of sense. Like if Orlando could do that, if they could get Kobe Bowman to agree to a trade there, they should do that and then delete his number and block him and never let him call them again, because that would be a heist. So I think it's the best sign that this is being reported, because if Garland gets traded, yes, few teams make more sense to want him than the Orlando Magic. But I think there are also a few teams that make less sense for the Cavs to send him to than the Orlando Magic. If the Cavs are going to trade Darius Garland, which again, I would not do, if they are going to trade Darius Garland, trading him to another Eastern Conference playoff team that is ascending when you are not getting a better player back, I don't think makes very much sense at all. I don't. Up next, want to talk about what Locked on Cavs is going to do this summer, a fun idea for shows that I want some input on. Plus, we've got more to get to, going to talk about what the Cavs also need to do if they trade Darius Garland. Because if they trade Garland, it creates holes. How would those need to be filled? We'll do that next right here on Locked on Cavs. Today's show is brought to you by DoorDash. DoorDash is what you should be looking for, because right now you're sitting there. Maybe it's lunchtime. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's breakfast. Maybe this is really your first listen as soon as you wake up. But you probably are hungry. I'm hungry right now. I might get something on DoorDash while I'm watching the finals, because game number 2 is about to start. And if somebody in this game scores 50 points or more, well, you are going to be the big winner, because playoff seasons means big performances, even bigger rewards. DoorDash bringing the heat with a slam dunk deal for Dash Pass members during the 2025 NBA playoffs called They Swoosh, You Score. Anytime a player drops 50 or more points in a playoff game, Dash Pass members score a free 3-piece crispy tender combo from Wingstop the very next day. Just place an order of $20 or more. Use code WINGSTOP50 at checkout. That combo is yours. Crispy, delicious, and totally free. Offer valid noon to midnight the day after the game. Terms do apply. Again, sign up for Dash Pass to unlock this and more exclusive deals all season long. When any player scores 50 or more in a playoff game, Dash Pass members can grab a free 3-piece crispy tender combo from Wingstop the very next day with a $20 or more order in code WINGSTOP50. That's WINGSTOP50. Again, that is Dash Pass, your door to more savings, more flavor, and more ways to win. Thank you again for making Locked on Cavs your first listen today and every day. Like I said earlier, we're on YouTube, and if you're watching, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button for me, click subscribe, hit that notification bell. I wanted to get out of the way first what I want to do over the course of this summer. This isn't something that's going to be starting very soon, because there's a lot going on. There's a lot to talk about, but it's a bit of a long-term project that I want to work on with this podcast. That's going to take place in late July after Summer League is over, in the month of August, early September, really before we start getting into exactly what next season is going to look like. Just, that downtime in the NBA calendar. I want to do a Cavs Rewind series where what I would like to do is go back and watch some of the iconic, influential, important games in Cavs, not only recent history, but history of the franchise. And I would love to take submissions over what games should be part of this series. Obviously, the 2016 finals come to mind. The 2015 finals come to mind. The 2007 postseason run comes to mind. I would like to sort of dive back into what made some of those moments great. So what I would love, if you want to comment on YouTube, or you can send them my way on social media, or you can email them to me at locavsmailbag@gmail.com. I would like to know what games you think make the most sense. That's what I would like to know. And furthermore, who you would like to have on as guests for those podcasts, because I think this could be a really cool project during the summer, not only to work on, but I think from a listener standpoint, it would be something that I would want to listen to. And I think a lot of you would like to listen to it as well during the summer months. So would just love some suggestions, just things that you want to, games that you want to hear about that happen during the summer month for us to talk about. So just keep that in mind as you think about it. Again, comment or email them my way. But the other thing I wanted to wrap up today's show with was, so let's say the Cavs do trade Darius Garland. What else would they have to do? Because I don't think that you just trade Darius Garland just to trade Darius Garland. I think I've been pretty clear about saying that. If you do trade Darius Garland, I think that there are a couple of things that, one, that trade needs to accomplish. And then there are a couple of other things that probably need to happen in conjunction with a Garland trade. And I think that if Garland is going to be traded, I think the Cavs need to come out as a better, more well-rounded basketball team because of it. That's why I don't think a trade with Orlando makes sense from their standpoint. That's why I think, and I mentioned this, I believe, on maybe last Monday's episode, maybe a trade for Jaden McDaniels and Rob Dillingham in Minnesota is one that you would look at that makes sense, that you say, okay, is this a possible way for the Cavs to get better in the short term and the long term? Because you can maybe then pair somebody like Dillingham as he grows up and Evan Mobley grow up at the same time. They're sort of on, the same timeline. And one of the things you can avoid is having your best player be your youngest player of your court. You kind of want them to be in the middle if you can. That is obviously a very difficult thing that's a difficult needle to thread. But I think that is important. And then behind that, because you're not going to likely trade Darius Garland for another point guard of his caliber. So I do think then if Darius Garland, if a trade is in the plans, I think that makes re-signing Ty Jerome much more important than it is on the surface. If Ty Jerome walks, I don't think that his production is replaceable really easily. Like I would think Craig Porter Jr. steps into that role next year, but I don't think it's fair to expect CPJ to have the type of season that Ty Jerome had this past year. If Darius Garland is still here, I think it's less important to have Ty Jerome back. If Darius Garland is gone, I think that makes the Cavs kind of have to make sure Ty Jerome is back in Cleveland next year. I think that becomes a much more important thing, because then not only are you trying to replace Ty's production off the bench, but you're trying to replace what Darius Garland did for you as an all-star point guard in the starting lineup. And I think having to replace both of those things would be a really, really difficult thing for the Cavs to do in one offseason. And when you are a team that is in a championship window, which the Cavs are unquestionably in right now, these are the things that I do think you have to think about. So trading Darius Garland away, I don't think would mean the Cavs would have to make a few more moves. I think trading Jared Allen away should probably then happen too, because if you're really going to rebuild your team or retool your roster, probably a better way to look at it or phrase it, I think that you should probably not only trade Darius Garland, Jared Allen should be somebody else that is out the door as well, because I think that you should not only be retooling the backcourt if you're going to, but you should probably retool the front court too. But thank you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. Be a friend. Tell a friend about the show. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure a friend is subscribed as well. And if you're watching the show on YouTube right now, do me a favor. Hit that thumbs up button for me. Click subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. I'll be back tomorrow talking more about the Cavs. Going to continue the player review series. Don't know who it's going to be yet, but it's going to be great.